We are standing here at the main entrance to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Old City. This structure, or at least parts of this structure, were built in the 300s, in the 4th century, by Emperor Constantine, along with the help of his mother Helena. Much like the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, Helena came to Jerusalem asking questions, and the locals identified this site as the location of both Golgotha, the place of the skull where Jesus was crucified, as well as his tomb. Now, prior to that, for the previous 2 centuries, Jerusalem had not been Jerusalem. Jerusalem had been Aelia Capitolina since the 2nd century under Hadrian. It had been a pagan city. The Jews had been driven out, and Hadrian built on this site. There was a major cardo out here, a street, and just off of it, right here, he built a Roman forum. He built a basilica, and on top of the site that was identified as Jesus' tomb, he purposefully built a temple to pagan gods. Constantine, as you may know, completely changed the landscape of the Holy Lands. He came along, he razed the temple of Hadrian, and he built a church here on this site. And inside today, if you go through those doors, there are things to see on the right, there are things to see on the left, but the major thing to see is that as you go in and down a hallway to the left, you will find the remains of Jewish rock-cut tombs from the 1st century. In other words, whatever we want to say about this site, it was a Jewish graveyard. And one of those tombs was identified as the tomb of Jesus, and it was enshrined inside of the rotunda and inside of the shrine around it, known as the edicule. One of the locals pointed to that as Jesus' tomb, and it's been identified as such ever since. This building, needless to say, has a long and extremely complicated history. This is not the original building for the most part. There were human destructions that came from various wars. It was eventually, in the 10th or 11th century, completely destroyed by the Muslims, and that was what precipitated the Crusades. There were fires associated with this building. There were earthquakes associated with this building. The design and the footprint of the building completely changed over the course of time, and so a lot of politics, a lot of war. Again, in the 1000s, it was completely dismantled. The only thing that was left was the rotunda area. And after the Crusades, or during the time of the Crusades, when this was a Latin kingdom, the Crusaders rebuilt the building, and what we see today is in large part Crusader architecture. All that said, it's fair to say that this site, as complicated as its history has been, is probably the most authentic location for 3 days that we as Christians believe changed the history of the world: the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Now, inside the church, we can look back out the entrance and see how the church is always packed with visitors and pilgrims. To our left of the entrance, there are stairs leading up to Calvary and others coming down by the light. Directly in front of us is a concrete slab which some believe to be where Jesus' body was laid after being taken down from the cross. And on the wall behind the camera is a mural showing Nicodemus and the women preparing Jesus' body for burial. And to the right of the camera, the dark hall leads to the Holy Tomb itself. Now we're in front of what is called an edicule, the building built around the tomb of Jesus. Inside, there's an altar with candles and various icons. In October 2016, the edicule was remodeled. The walls and foundation were strengthened, and the edicule was cleaned. After centuries, archaeologists also had a chance to dig down to see if they could confirm this as Jesus' tomb, and they did find a stone cover of the tomb with a cross on it, which could have marked the spot. Above us, the sunlight comes through a window in the large gray dome, visible all over Jerusalem. Each religious group, which has access to the church, chooses men who serve in various ceremonies of worship and teaching. Here we see two men spreading incense as they walk back and forth in front of the church, then enter it.